Well, a former radio DJ is set to appear in the Randburg Magistrate's court today. The former Ukhozi FM presenter is accused of instigating some of the unrest and looting that swept through KZN and Gauteng last week. The DJ and staunch supporter of Jacob Zuma gave President Cyril Ramaphosa 3 days to release Zuma from jail or warned that all hell would break loose. He was addressing scores of Zuma supporters in Kwamamai in Johannesburg on the 11th of June. Well, our reporter Govan Whittles is in Randburg, and we're going to cross to him now. He's been covering this case of instigators' arrests for several days now. Govan, just a recap of what happened yesterday with the person that was in court for instigating some of the unrest. Just take us back to one of the first accused.
Yeah, well, it's been a very busy week for the South African Police Service as well as the NPA, Annika. So they have Bruce Nimmerhout, who is a member of the Patriotic Alliance, who appeared on charges of inciting public violence in the Randburg Magistrates Court. We understand Mr. Mavuso also appeared in the Western Area Magistrates Court on similar charges. Another woman appeared in Nigel, but today we're seeing the appearance of the former Ukhozi FM DJ, also allegedly, according to his lawyer, appearing on charges of the old Riotous Assembly Act. But we understand that the NPA would be charging him for his remarks outside Kwamamai, where he allegedly said that all hell would break loose if former President Jacob Zuma was not released. He is a very controversial figure. The former DJ was also one of the people instrumental in organizing crowds outside the former president's Nkandla homestead in the days leading up to his eventual arrest and incarceration. And it does appear that the NPA is confident of its case. Its national leadership or spokesperson is here today to oversee the first appearance. But we still don't know if he is being labeled as one of the main instigators of what the president called an insurrection. So, as far as we know, what he's being charged for is in relation to some of the protests that have taken place. But of course, we've been made aware by the government that they believe the attacks on warehouses and infrastructure was part of a more sinister insurrection plan. So we'll have to see what charges he appears on, but he should be in court within the next hour. Annika.
Govan, do you know if you need more than 12 so-called inciters in order for there to be an attempted insurrection?
Not clear at this point. We do know from one of the reports in the Daily Maverick that there appears to be a dossier of WhatsApp messages, and it appears, according to the Daily Maverick, that there had been a number of WhatsApp groups in which the plans for this insurrection were allegedly hatched. And some of the messages which were published by the Daily Maverick suggest that there had been a coordinated effort to destabilize the country in KwaZulu-Natal as well as Gauteng. And those messages, and the report goes on to allege that those people who were organizing it may have had links to the ANC. So these are all allegations at this point, and it's not clear why the number 12 would mean that it would be an insurrection. But what we do know is that they are looking at these WhatsApp groups and whether there was a network which was activated to cause these protests and attack vital points of infrastructure and businesses in KwaZulu-Natal and in Gauteng. Since the Deputy Minister of State Security, Zizi Kodwa, alleged that South Africa's former ambassador to Japan, Thulani Dlomo, may have had a hand in the so-called insurrection, no charges have been brought against Mr. Dlomo. He says he's cooperating with the police, but so far we haven't seen anyone from the so-called spy network that's allegedly loyal to the former president being charged or being brought to court. So far what we've seen are people who've been sending WhatsApp messages, making calls on social media, being brought to court on charges of incitement for violence. So we're yet to see the NPA or the police prosecute those for the insurrection.
There was a lot of speculation in the week before that there were sort of, as you said, former state security links that were close to the former President Jacob Zuma, part of his network, and also former Umkhonto weSizwe operatives who had planned to do things very sort of KGB style, poison water supplies, attack basic infrastructure. Has anyone like that come under state security's radar that you know of?
Not as far as we're aware. As the last information that we got from our sources suggested that they are not at the point yet where they're going to sign a warrant of arrest for any of those people that are linked to the so-called spy network. Although what we have seen is one of the close allies of former President Jacob Zuma, Andile Lungisa, being brought in for questioning by the Hawks. And according to Mr. Lungisa, important to state, the Hawks haven't corroborated whether this was what actually happened. Mr. Lungisa saying that he was accused of trying to assemble an arsenal of weapons to overthrow the country, but says he was eventually only charged for contravening the COVID-19 regulations. And in KwaZulu-Natal, another ally of the former president, Zandile Gumede, is very unhappy with being linked to the so-called instigators and went to the police to lay a charge for being associated with what she called coup plotters and insisting that she had no hand in the unrest which took place in KZN. Andile Lungisa similarly saying he had no hand in that unrest and denies the allegation of trying to assemble an arsenal. And then the convener of the Cadres Assembly, a retired general in the South African National Defence Force, Mojo Motau, saying that he also had no hand in causing the unrest. Those allegations made again by the Deputy Minister of SSA, Zizi Kodwa. And Motau saying, the retired general, saying that he believes there was no insurrection. And what we saw were protests that got out of hand because the government believed they would die down, and eventually they got worse. And then, of course, Mr. Tulani Dlomo denying that he had any hand in this. So as of yet, the NPA hasn't brought anyone to court that's part of this so-called network and hasn't produced any evidence yet of this grand plan of the insurrection.
Thanks so much, Govan Whittles. I'll be interested to see if these charges stick and actually end up in a successful prosecution, but we will keep in touch with Govan Whittles there.